My daughter came home in tears after attending a Christmas gathering at her grandparents' house. She looked distraught and silently handed me a wrapped present. "Mom, look at this, why do I have to go through this?" she exclaimed. I was stunned into silence. When I unwrapped the gift, I realized it was completely inappropriate for a child. Alarmed, I immediately contacted the police, which led to the exposure of the gift giver's actions and the chaos that followed. This situation ignited significant drama within our family, and the individual responsible faced serious repercussions. At 45, I had embarked on a new career at 34, prompted by a derogatory remark from a former employer. I was fortunate to work in an environment that values skills over age or gender, and my husband, who was my supervisor at the time, provided incredible support. We married quickly and now share a lovely daughter in 4th grade who has a gentle spirit, loves reading, and shows kindness to everyone. However, my relationship with my sister-in-law is strained. While I get along well with my in-laws, she disapproves of me because I'm older than my husband and ridicules our swift marriage. Her hurtful comments about my age and the changes to my body post-pregnancy stung, yet I tried to remain unaffected for my own peace. Her attitude shifted only after she had a hasty wedding and moved away, which reduced our interactions and spared me from her barbs. This change allowed me to concentrate on the joys of welcoming our daughter into our lives. Despite the challenges of childbirth, bringing our daughter into the world was a joyful milestone that lifted the negativity that had once overshadowed our happiness. My husband's unwavering support and encouraging words were invaluable during the delivery. When our daughter cried for the first time, his heartfelt appreciation for my efforts brought us both to tears of joy. 5 months later, my sister-in-law gave birth to a son and resumed her visits to our home, which took about an hour each time. It seemed her goal was to draw negative comparisons between our children and make hurtful remarks about my age, impacting my daughter. She made comments about the supposed wrinkles on my daughter's face compared to her son's smooth skin. I was taken aback by her audacity, especially since she would show up empty-handed, taking diapers and formula as if it were her right. Eventually, her visits came to an end when her husband's job required them to relocate. This brought a brief period of peace until our daughter began elementary school and discovered her cousin was also enrolled. Despite the tensions within our families, our daughter and her cousin developed a close friendship. She, being older, was kind and nurturing, and he quickly became popular among his peers. By 3rd grade, they were in the same class, and my daughter earned recognition for a summer reading project, which was even published in the local newspaper. This achievement became a hot topic among family members, especially during a visit to my in-laws. During this visit, many relatives gathered, likely due to my daughter's accomplishment. Yet, my sister-in-law seemed agitated by our family receiving attention. She complained that it was unfair, claiming that the celebrated book was meant for her son, even though the truth was that the children had decided together on which book report to submit. After reading both options, they collaboratively chose, demonstrating a spirit of teamwork that my nephew appreciated. This incident showcased the children's ability to share and support one another, contrasting sharply with the conflicts among the adults. My nephew preferred the book my daughter read first, and graciously, she allowed him to choose it. However, when I recounted this story, my sister-in-law accused me of writing the award-winning reflection for my daughter, perhaps recalling my enjoyment of writing novels in college, a fact she likely learned from my husband. Unbeknownst to me, she was spreading malicious rumors at school, suggesting that I had used my connections with the competition judges to unfairly boost my daughter's submission. These unfounded accusations deeply upset my daughter, causing her to lose interest in her once-beloved reading. This was the final straw for me. I couldn't bear to see her so disheartened, not just because of the false claims against me, but also because she had become a target of cruel gossip. Before taking any action, I confided in my husband, sharing for the first time the extent of his sister's unkindness toward me since we married. This included her taking clothes intended for our daughter, justifying it by saying that infants couldn't tell the difference between genders, and making derogatory remarks about my appearance during pregnancy, likening me to a sumo wrestler. Outraged by his sister's behavior, my husband agreed it was time to involve his parents, insisting on addressing the situation personally. Together with his parents, he confronted my sister-in-law at her home. Her initial delight at the surprise visit quickly faded into shock as she faced a stern reprimand from my husband. Instead of taking responsibility, she directed her anger at me, accusing me of betraying her to her favorite brother and attempting to paint herself as the victim. Initially, I answered her calls, believing she sought reconciliation, only to discover she was venting her frustrations instead. Eventually, I redirected her number to voicemail, effectively ignoring her attempts to reach out. The call stopped after a couple of weeks, which I thought was due to her losing interest. Later, I found out that wasn't the case. In December, my in-laws organized a children's Christmas party, their first, which made me curious about the timing. My daughter, however, was excited to be invited, recalling the joyful Christmas celebration from her kindergarten days and hoping for a similar experience at her elementary school. Unfortunately, her school didn't hold such events because of its policy on religious gatherings. I often wonder about the need for strict adherence to religious traditions when Christmas has evolved into a holiday celebrated worldwide, each culture adding its unique touch. This thought lingers, especially since I've noticed that some parents are very particular about maintaining their religious significance. For the past 2 years, my daughter and I have opted to celebrate Christmas quietly at home, embracing the festive spirit our way. She especially enjoys our gift exchanges, which are the highlight of our celebration. This year, my in-laws suggested a modest $11 budget for a gift exchange at their party. My daughter and I set off on an adventure to a nearby shopping mall, searching for the perfect gift. In the end, she chose one of her beloved picture books, eager to share its story and joy with someone else during the gathering. On the day of the event, she packed the present and made her way to my in-laws' house, just a short bus ride away. After informing my mother-in-law of her impending arrival, she graciously offered to pick her up from the bus stop. Later, a call from my daughter reassured me she had arrived safely, momentarily easing my worries. Unfortunately, that sense of peace was short-lived. About 50 minutes later, the unexpected sound of the front door opening on a weekday startled me. My husband was at work, and I was working from home during my daughter's winter break. The sight that met me was heartbreaking. My daughter stood by the entrance, tears streaming down her face. She handed me a gift-wrapped bag, her expression suggesting it would explain everything. Inside, I discovered a newspaper with her reading reflection shredded into pieces, accompanied by a disturbing card written in red ink, warning us about the dangers of arrogance, or else we might end up like the disfigured stuffed animal also inside the bag, stained red to resemble blood. This unsettling display was far from a harmless prank. My daughter revealed that this horrendous gift was the work of my sister-in-law, which left me stunned. The party was supposed to be a joyful, child-centric occasion, with an understanding among adults to refrain from personal gift-giving. Despite not attending the party with my daughter, I was shocked to learn that my sister-in-law had been present and had committed such a vile act against her. Had my mother-in-law known her daughter was there, she would have surely informed me, as she had always insisted we communicate any issues stemming from her daughter. This breach of trust was disheartening, highlighting a deliberate effort to cause us harm. Unbeknownst to my mother-in-law, after my daughter returned home distressed, I urged her to inform her grandmother about the incident. However, before she could do so, my sister-in-law intervened, claiming she hadn't called for her and that only children associated with missionary schools were welcome. My daughter, confused, asked what a missionary school was, leaving me at a loss for words. Recently, a relative had been accepted into a missionary school, igniting much discussion within the family. My sister-in-law's son attended a missionary kindergarten, and we had heard stories of relatives who were unaware they were connected to such schools until enrollment. We had chosen a local kindergarten and public elementary school for our daughter instead. It seemed my sister-in-law was using this as yet another chance to belittle my daughter. Disturbed by the threatening gift my daughter had received, I hurried to the police station, emphasizing the seriousness of the threat. Initially hesitant, the police suggested it was a family matter. Thankfully, a female officer recognized the severity of the situation, acknowledging that threats and violence within families are reportable offenses. She empathized with our fear and immediately promised to visit my sister-in-law with a warning. That evening, when my husband returned home, I recounted the day's events. Outraged, he condemned his sister's spiteful actions and contacted his parents, who were hosting the Christmas party but claimed they knew nothing about the incident. They speculated that my sister-in-law might have slipped in through an unlocked back door while my mother-in-law was occupied with other tasks. The party had been left in the care of the younger family members. After the police officer delivered a stern warning to my sister-in-law regarding the consequences of her behavior, my in-laws, disturbed by the potential criminality, organized a family meeting to address the issue. At the meeting at my in-laws' house, my sister-in-law and her husband arrived late. She appeared visibly upset and unrepentant about the police involvement, while her husband seemed unaware of the meeting's purpose. This situation highlighted the seriousness of the matter. prompting a collective family discussion on how to proceed and address the underlying tensions. When her husband finally learned of his wife's actions toward our family, his shock was evident. He had been completely oblivious to the extent of the situation until that moment and offered his apologies to us. He appeared to be truly regretful, a sharp contrast to my sister-in-law, who remained stubborn and unrepentant. Her argument that the police's failure to arrest her indicated her innocence left everyone speechless, revealing a denial that was difficult for us to grasp. In a surprising twist, he announced his intention to divorce her. This shocking news caught us all off guard, especially since there were no visible signs of marital strife. He explained that he had endured her behavior for years, which had progressed from neglecting household chores and childcare to instilling fear through her recklessness. Her obsession with maintaining appearances resulted in numerous unnecessary relocations, all driven by vanity and the need to uphold a certain social standing rather than any genuine job obligations. Their frequent moves were often justified by her ambitions for their son, attempting to enroll him in elite kindergartens that only led to disappointment and further embarrassment. Ultimately, they opted for a public elementary school, a decision made in favor of their son's wishes. Despite her initial resistance, the husband's choice to end the marriage wasn't impulsive but rather a culmination of years of frustration, now accelerated by her recent harassment. Taken aback by the divorce announcement, my sister-in-law made a half-hearted attempt at an apology, seemingly desperate to change the outcome, insisting her actions were merely jokes or pranks. However, the severity of her behavior, especially the threatening message meant for a child, far exceeded what could be brushed off as humor. Such actions, capable of instilling fear even in adults, were indefensible and emphasized the irreparable rift within the family. I confronted her, pointing out the disconnect between her actions and the instincts expected of a nurturing parent. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you automatically possess parental instincts, I remarked, suggesting that her conduct was far from what one would anticipate from someone in her role. My husband, witnessing her tears, firmly stated that crying would not resolve the issue. At her age, she shouldn't expect sympathy to absolve her misdeeds. Still, she continued to weep, denying any wrongdoing and questioning why she was being singled out for blame. She even insinuated that the family's disapproval stemmed from my marriage to her brother, implying that the problem lay with my age rather than her actions. Her inability to recognize the seriousness of her behavior left us all speechless, particularly shocking my husband. The atmosphere grew tense with unresolved issues, prompting an abrupt end to the discussion, and her husband had no choice but to take her home. Their divorce proceedings later unfolded, marked by her refusal to acknowledge her shortcomings. It was only when her son innocently recounted the Christmas party that the situation shifted, leading her to reluctantly agree to the divorce. Unintentionally, her son described the unsettling gift exchange he had witnessed, particularly the horrifying image of a stuffed animal torn apart and stained with red, resembling blood. This revelation quickly circulated through the school community, alarming both teachers and parents. In the wake of this incident, my daughter found it difficult to return to school, her spirits dampened by the gossip connecting her to her cousin's story. The link between her absence and the Christmas party events became a topic of speculation, highlighting how one reckless act could impact many lives. I had hoped for a quiet resolution to the entire ordeal, allowing my daughter to return to school when she felt ready. Her cousin's intention in sharing the disturbing experience was not for entertainment but rather as a desperate plea to stop his mother's harmful actions. Witnessing the consequences of these revelations, her husband was compelled to hasten the divorce proceedings, agreeing to her terms just to finalize their separation. By that point, she had gained notoriety in the community for her threatening behavior toward children, resulting in her being ostracized and facing hostility from neighbors. Feeling trapped and vilified, she viewed the divorce as an escape, envisioning that returning to her parental home would provide comfort. However, her estranged husband remained adamant about retaining custody of their son, a decision she accepted without much resistance, coldly stating her indifference towards her son as she planned to remarry, claiming that children were a burden on her plans. Her cruel words were met with her son's brave rejection. He expressed that he didn't need her in his life, finding solace in his father's care and warning her against approaching his cousin. Her situation deteriorated when she returned to her parents' house, where she was denied entry, forcing her to confront the consequences of her actions alone. This downward spiral led her into precarious situations just to meet basic needs, accruing debt from dubious sources, and eventually, she disappeared from our lives. My husband and his parents opted not to file a missing persons report, accepting her absence as a resolution. In the aftermath, my daughter regained the confidence to return to school, where her cousin continues to be a supportive ally, promising to watch over her. This challenging time has unexpectedly strengthened the bond between our families, especially with my former brother-in-law. As we unite in support of the children, my in-laws have wholeheartedly embraced both grandchildren, stepping in to offer care and support in the absence of my sister-in-law. With her out of the picture, our family has found peace and developed a strong, trusting relationship free from previous conflicts. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay amazed.